Welcome aboard, applicants. I thought we would begin with the General Bar Exam July 2018, question number one. As like switching gears so we can get an essay like this kicked out. As with all essays, let's go to the call of the question. Has Stan and or Best breached the contract? Well, we already know the area of law right now. Highlight that right here. We have contract law. If so, what damages might be recovered, if any, by each of them? Discuss. Okay. Now down here, we want to make sure to put down our shopping list for contract law, contract formation, third-party rights, covenants, conditions, excuses, discharge of the duty to perform, and breach of contract, and remedies issues. Okay. Now, having put that down, let's start up here underneath our question, reading our question for story. Okay. In January, Stan, a farmer, agreed in a valid written contract, very important here to highlight that, to sell to Best Sauce Maker Company Best 5,000 bushels of tomatoes on July 1st at $100 per bushel, payable upon delivery. On May 15th, Stan sent Best the following email. Heavy rains in March through May slowed tomato ripening. Delivery will be 2 weeks late. Best replied, okay. On May 22nd, an employee of Delta Bank Delta, where Best and Stan banked, told Best that rains had damaged Stan's tomato crops and that Stan would be unable to fulfill all his contracts. Best called Stan and asked about the banker's comment. Stan said, won't know until June 10th whether I'll have enough tomatoes for all my contracts. Best replied, we need a firm commitment by May 27th or we'll buy the tomatoes elsewhere. Stan did not contact Best by May 27th. This is an important fact to bring to our attention, I should say. And then on June 3rd, Best contracted to buy the 5,000 bushels it needed from Argo Farms for $110 per bushel. On June 6th, Stan told Best, worry was for nothing. I'll be able to deliver all 5,000 bushels. Best replied, too late. We made other arrangements. You owe us $50,000. Concerned about quickly finding another buyer, Stan sold the 5,000 bushels to a vegetable wholesaler for $95 per bushel. Stan sued Best for breach of contract. Best countersued Stan for breach of contract. Okay, let's establish our contract now. What would be our applicable law? Absolutely, Uniform Commercial Code. Okay. Why? Because we're dealing with the sale or transaction in goods. Goods, tangible, movable property, readily identifiable at the time of contract formation. Now, down up here we have Stan, a farmer, and Best Sauce Maker. Definitely people who would regularly deal in the goods of the kind, which would be tomatoes. So, both parties. Okay, here we go. Now, contract formation, or we could actually say just exactly valid written contract could also be our header. Contract formation, valid written contract, and yes, and then when we go through in our analysis concerning validly written contract, we're going to go through mutual assent concerning the value of, or I should say the quantity, 5,000 bushels, delivery date July 1st, $100 per bushel, payable upon delivery, that would be the time for performance, subject matter, that would be bushels of tomatoes, parties, Stan and Best, and okay, so that would establish our mutual assent, and we would make sure to talk about consideration, and statute of frauds would just be brought up very briefly in terms of our defense. Then we're moving onward now to more performance related issues. We didn't have third-party rights, so we don't have that problem. So now after we form the contract, what other issues would be raised by the May 15th Stan sent Best the following email? Heavy rains in March, May, slowed tomato ripening. Delivery will be 2 weeks late. Well, what could this be seen as? Well, delivery being late 2 weeks, okay, could be seen possibly as a modification. And remember, a modification for the Uniform Commercial Code would require good faith. I'll make sure to note that, okay? And remember now, under modification, we have to establish mutual assent. And then the consideration requirement, which we already talked about, would have been good faith, okay? And then how do we know that the possible issue of modification was accepted? Well, Best replied, okay. Now, on May 22nd, an employee at Delta Bank now, where Best and Stan Bank told Best that rains had damaged Stan's tomato crops and that Stan would be unable to fulfill all his contracts. Now, what does that do? What did that communication do? That would be prospective inability to perform, which would put, the put into Best's side of the contract the aspect about right to demand adequate assurance, because this is a reliable resource, a place where both Best and Stan banked, okay, and it was also an employee of that Delta Bank, and also too that those factors would combine together to create that insecurity that would require the that insecurity that would create the prospective inability to perform, which would then bring about the demand for adequate assurance. And what type of adequate assurance does Stan provide? Now, Best called Stan and asked about the banker's comment. Stan said, "Won't know until January 10th whether I'll have enough tomatoes for all my contracts." Now, won't know until January 10th could possibly supply some kind of security in that he hasn't made a yes or no determination. However, what Best does say that's really interesting, he says we need a firm commitment by May 22nd. Can Best do this? Well, let's ask ourselves here. They formed a contract on, let's see here, in January, and that the delivery date was supposed to be of the tomatoes was supposed to be July 1st, and he has to have a firm commitment by May 22nd. But remember, even that delivery date of July 1st has been pushed ahead possibly, so it would be 2 weeks late. So it looks to me like the aspect concerning the won't know until June 10th, and then the firm commitment seems a little bit much. I would have to say that. In other words, we would have to say that that it would be unreasonable for Best to require a firm commitment by May 22nd, or they'll buy the tomatoes elsewhere. Stan still has what the seller's right to cure aspect, even if there's a non-conforming shipment, and the window for delivery date hasn't closed yet. So this is a really interesting contention that Stan could claim against Best, as to Best's reply that he or she needs a firm commitment by May 27th, okay, or that they'll buy the tomatoes elsewhere. So we want to make sure to put that down there. That could also mean there might have been well, see, after demand for adequate assurance, there might have been a anticipatory repudiation. We're not really sure. We'll hang on to that aspect, because the communication up here as anticipatory repudiation for the or will buy it elsewhere might have been seen, but or I should say that. Let me continue reading before I get too far ahead of myself here. Stan did not contact Best by May 27th. There's your anticipatory repudiation by Best, as like Stan not getting back to Best in any way as to why, or to calm Best's nervousness as to the May 27th aspect, and whether or not Stan would know until June 10th, which at that point was only May 22nd. So now on June 3rd, Best contracted to buy that. Now this is where I see that contracted to buy the 5,000 bushels it needed from Argo Farm for the $110 per bushel. At this point, I believe that we would have an anticipatory repudiation. Okay, by both parties here, because we not only have anticipatory repudiation in the fact that from Best perspective, Stan did not get back to Best, and we also have Best repudiating through the fact that he's buying tomatoes, 5,000 bushels of tomatoes outside the contract. So this is a really interesting aspect. That June 3rd could be seen by both parties as an anticipatory repudiation flowing to the other party from the other party. So it's like Best breaching and Stan breaching. Now on June 6th, Stan told Best, "Worry was for nothing. I'll be able to deliver all 5,000 bushels." Best replied, "Too late. We made other arrangements. You owe us $50,000. Now this also too was just technically a follow-up as to the aspect about buying the 5,000 bushels it needed from Argo Farms. So this technically could have been seen as a continuation of that anticipatory repudiation by Best in terms of their contract with Stan. Now, concerned about quickly finding another buyer, Stan sold the 5,000 bushels to a vegetable wholesaler for $95. Now, at this point, we want to make sure to bring about our breach of contract we're trying to deal with perfect tender rule because we're dealing with the sale of goods, and it's a one delivery. Okay, and then under remedies, this is sellers or Stan's remedies. Excuse me. This is the Stan's remedy would be that he also is he's mitigating his damages. Mitigation of damages. At this point, Stan's remedies as well. It would be his expectation, or I should say this, lost volume seller, which would be for the lost profits. In other words, he's selling at a loss up here for the $95 because he could have made under the contract how much per bushel? $100. So he's at a loss now per bushel $5,000 or $5. So I want to make sure to note that. So it's $100 per bushel minus the amount that he actually paid, $95 per bushel, which comes out to be that $5. Excuse me. Thank you for your patience. There we go. Now, what is it that Best is going to say? Well, remember he purchased the 5,000 from Argo Farms for $110 per bushel, which is $10 greater than the contract price. And according to Best remedies, remember here he's going to try to say that he mitigated his damages. And Best, well, by the way, we are going to add incidental damages for Stan as well. Remember, sellers do not get consequential damages. Okay, down here, Best remedies. Remember now, because he mitigated by trying to buy we're hoping a reasonably equivalent tomato, 5,000 bushels of tomatoes from Argo Farms. And if that's the case, that he would be able to then recover under cover for the UCC right here, cover damages, and that would be the difference between the cost of cover minus the contract price, which would be $10 per bushel. And then remember, Best can actually recover possible consequential damages, which probably would not be available because it wasn't for any of those particular losses were not foreseeable at the time of contract formation. And best might be able to recover incidental damages. Okay. Now, reading now through here, concerned about quickly finding. We already talked about that. Best suit. Okay, I think we got this. I think, and then okay, going through here, I think we've established the rem. Okay, first of all, going through this really lickety split. Applicable law uniform commercial code because we're dealing with the tomatoes. Both parties are merchants. There was a formed contract, valid written contract. Make sure to just quickly go through mutual assent, consideration, statute of frauds, modification, UCC requires mutual assent. The considerations of the good faith. That was involving the delay of the delivery being 2 weeks. Prospect of inability, that's what the Delta Bank employee was creating in terms of best, or within best. Best then demanded adequate assurance from Stan. The argument could be made by Best that Stan's not getting back to Best brought about the anticipatory repudiation. But remember, both parties could have been seen as anticipatorily repudiating in that when Best contracted outside the contract, he then was seen an anticipatory repudiation or a breach of contract. Okay, and then breach of contract, both parties perfectly tendering. Neither party technically perfectly tendered to the other, so it could be argued that we both have material breaches flowing to one another for their breach of contract claims against one another. And then remedies, Stan's remedies would be the mitigation of damages, which is what he observed, and then lost volume sell of the lost profit $5. Incidental damages, best remedies though would be mitigation damages, which he observed. Cover damages, which is the difference between the cost to cover minus the contract price, $10 per bushel. Best remedies would be consequential damages possibly, and incidental damages. Make sure to throw in a conclusion, and we have this thing. Okay, I want to put a shout out to Chest Cruncher TV. Keep chest crunching, Chest Cruncher. I also want to put a shout out to my Amazon Kindle book, Battling Big Bad Baby Bar, Essay Basics. Thank you for tuning in, and God bless.